Alex Anthopoulos is reportedly more interested in acquiring offense than starting pitching at the trade deadline. Let's talk about it. Yes, welcome on into a special bonus edition of Braves Today, a production of the Believe Podcast Network and presented to you by FanDuel. I'm your host, Lindsey Crosby, author of the Braves Today newsletter over at bravestoday.com. And I'm also a little frustrated, and that's why we have a bonus episode on a Saturday morning. So Ken Rosenthal of The Athletic, who, up front, let's state, is one of MLB's most connected insiders, right? Like, tier one is Jeff Passan, Ken Rosenthal, Jason Stark, Robert Murray. Like, there's four or five guys. And then right below them is where you get the John Heymans, and you keep going down, right? But like those four guys are like the most connected national MLB reporters. Rosenthal wrote a piece on Friday, 12 pressing questions that will define the trade deadline. And one of them was about the Braves and Cubs adding to their rotation. And those of you on YouTube, you'll be able to see the copy. Those of you on audio, I'm going to read this out loud because, yes, I do love you guys too, but also this bears to be just in his own words. You need to hear what Ken Rosenthal wrote. Atlanta Braves president of baseball operations, Alex Anthopoulos, was open about his desire last offseason to add a playoff caliber starter, but still hasn't done it. Anthopoulos, according to people briefed on his discussions, currently is more focused on his offense while weighing multiple internal options for his rotation. The Braves will evaluate Reynaldo Lopez, Bryce Elder, and Owen Murphy in the next 2.5 weeks. They are also monitoring the recoveries of Martin Perez, AJ Smith-Shawver, and Spencer Schwellenbach. Offensively, they will activate right fielder Ronald Acuna Jr. and catcher Sean Murphy once they regain their timing on their respective rehab assignments. Quick note here, Murphy is not on a rehab assignment yet. But club officials have been frustrated with the team's inconsistent run production in recent weeks. Third baseman Austin Riley remains a primary culprit. His .618 OPS is the 10th lowest in the league. Woo! There is a lot to unpack here. Let's start with the obvious. The decision, if this is a correct report, and I'm going to get into that in a second, the decision to focus on adding offense instead of adding pitching, if that is the direction the Braves go at the trade deadline, from where we sit right now, it looks like it's going to be a mistake. Okay? I threw some caveats in there. I want to talk about this. I said, if this is true, I have no reason, and I am not saying that Ken Rosenthal is making anything up. I 100% believe this is what he was told. This was what his source informed him, the people briefed on AA's discussions, and he is bringing us what he considers to be the truth. That Alex Anthopoulos is more focused on finding offense right now and is weighing multiple internal options for his rotation. Let's break down what this could mean, okay? The different avenues here, because it is very possible that this could be a mistake. And I want to preface up front right here, we're only 4 minutes in, you do not need to get angry about this yet. There are 16 days between now and the trade deadline. And something that I try really hard on this show, on the newsletter, on Twitter, and things like that to do is not get mad about things until they happen, right? If this approach sticks, and this is what they end up deciding is the proper course of action 16 days from now, I am very likely going to get frustrated and angry at that point. Right now, let's step back and let's look at this from a front office perspective, okay? So, they said in here they were frustrated by the team's inconsistent run production in recent weeks. This is the month of June, people. The month of June, the Atlanta Braves were, by just about every measure, the worst offense in baseball, and it wasn't particularly close. They were significantly worse in a couple major areas, like runs, WRC+. The gap was significant. The gap from 30th to 29th was the same as 29th to 21 or something nuts like that. So I would understand the desire to find more offense. And you would think about, okay, if you can find a corner outfielder, that would give you the ability to kill two birds with one stone because you could move Mauricio Dubon to third base and you would not need to play Austin Riley at third base in the postseason. So I understand the focus on looking for offense. I get it. Dom Smith has been a disaster since the first couple weeks of the season. And maybe you can do something with Acuna and Baldwin sharing time at DH and Ronald's in the field when he's not DHing and all of that, but you need to add another bat to make that work. I'm not saying that is a wrong approach to take. The only way that going with internal options makes sense is in the rotation, is if you get a lot of really good information between now and the trade deadline. And a lot of the news we got on Friday afternoon from Walt Weiss was not great. Okay? The original plan for Spencer Schwellenbach, as of a month ago, was that around the All-Star break, he was going to head to Florida to significantly ramp up his throwing progression in advance of a rehab stint. Well, guess what? He's still in Atlanta. And when Walt Weiss was asked about that and Strider together, it was a really evasive answer. It was, I think there's a chance we could see both of them. Talking about this season. As we sit here today, it's hard to say. Kind of evasive. It would take Schwellenbach a month to 6 weeks to get ready. If he's not in Northport by the trade deadline, it's hard to see him getting a couple major league starts under his belt before the postseason starts. And Strider, don't get me started on Strider. June 12th was when he went on the IL. I'm sorry, he left to start on June 12th. He went to the IL soon after. 60-day IL. He's not even eligible to come back until mid-August. And the question that Mark Bowden of MLB.com asked Walt Weiss was Strider done for the year? And that's when Walt Weiss was still evasive and said, there's a chance we could see both of these guys. You can't count on either one of them. So now you're left with the internal options. The guys who we have seen pitch this year, right? You're left with a Hurston Waldrop, J.R. Ritchie, an Owen Murphy who pitches tomorrow. I just did a whole show, pitches today. I did a whole show on Friday morning, first segment about him, and somebody complained and we talked about it, of course. But a Bryce Elder, a Martin Perez, a Reynaldo Lopez, a Grant Holmes. And I just said 7 names. And so I could see from a front office perspective how Rosenthal's report could technically be true, that they want to evaluate those 7 names I just mentioned to see if they are ready or not to be a Game 3 starter or a Game 2 starter, and have an idea of that by the trade deadline on August 3rd. I wrote a whole 20-something hundred word newsletter, like 2,400 words or whatever, on Friday morning about that exact topic, saying that you needed to use the now 16, then 17 days to evaluate all of these guys. So there is a world where Rosenthal's reporting is accurate and we don't have to panic about Atlanta ignoring pitching at the trade deadline. But let me tell you my worry about that. And let me tell you, I put this report on social media on Friday, and there's a lot of other people who have the same worries that are now coming to my head. Let's talk about why this report is a problem. We'll do that next, right here on Braves Today. But first, this episode's brought to you by our friends at IQ Bar, our exclusive snack, hydration, and coffee sponsor. IQ Bar protein bars, IQ Mix hydration mixes, and IQ Joe mushroom-infused coffees are the tasty, low-sugar brain and body fuel that you need to win your day. The Ultimate Sampler Pack's a great way to try all of the IQ Bar products and flavors. You get 9 IQ bars, 8 IQ Mix sticks, and 4 IQ Joe sticks. And all IQ Bar products are clean label certified and entirely free from gluten, dairy, soy, GMOs, and artificial ingredients. With over 20,000 5-star reviews and counting, more people than ever are fueling their busy lifestyles with IQ Bar's brain and body boosting bars, hydration mixes, and mushroom-infused coffees. And the Ultimate Sampler Pack includes all 3. Right now, IQ Bar is offering Braves Today listeners 20% off of all IQ Bar products, including the Ultimate Sampler Pack, plus free shipping. To get your 20% off, text MLB to 64000. That's MLB to 64000. That's MLB to 64000. Message and data rates may apply. See terms for details. The problem with this report from Ken Rosenthal is that if AA was looking at internal options and then decided to stay with internal options, is that would be very on brand for Alex Anthopoulos to do. Think back to the last couple seasons and the lack of aggressiveness for pitching, for starting pitching at the trade deadline. Going back and thinking about how the Braves have added marginal names, right? Drew Smyly, Yanni Chirinos. And most of the acquisitions, the Braves have been willing to kind of go into, I'm not going to say an uncomfortable area, but have been willing to push a little farther for, have been relievers, right? Getting a Pierce Johnson or a Tyler Kenley or Raisel Iglesias. He was a trade deadline acquisition because they took on his contract from the Angels. And grabbing players with contracts and paying money rather than giving up prospects has been AA's MO. That's been the thing that he's been willing to do. The thing he's not been willing to do is to trade prospects in season for meaningful upgrades, quality upgrades at a specific position. Even the 2020, even the World Series season haul, the 21 haul of outfielders, it was a bunch of spare parts going out to have a bunch of spare parts coming in, or guys who had bad contracts attached to them, or guys who had been hurt. Rosario was on the injured list when we got him, if I remember. And it all worked out. Every single one of those outfielders hit. Every single bet panned out. The Braves, you heard Rosenthal say it. The Braves talked about adding an impact starter over the offseason and they wouldn't do it. Because ultimately, Alex Anthopoulos wasn't willing to make an uncomfortable deal, right? They had an agreement in place to get Freddie Peralta. But it would have cost them J.R. Ritchie and they wouldn't have got an extension on it. And you can look at Peralta's results this season and say it was a smart decision to not go and get him. I would point out a lot of the underlying numbers are very similar to where his other underlying numbers have been in the previous seasons. And he's tainted by the stench of New York and playing for the Mets. At this point, it's got to be a cursed franchise. And so the problem I have with this report is it very well is probably the smart thing to be doing right now, to be focusing on internal options to evaluate what you have in the next 2 weeks. But I don't think we have any faith that they're going to come off of those internal options to go grab one of the few impact starters that ends up being available. The smart thing to do 16 days out, Yes, it's to look and see what you can get from Murphy, to look and see what you can get from Smith-Shawver, to see what you can get from Waldrop. That is the correct thing to do. You need to know what you have in these guys. But the problem, and I don't want to speak for everybody, but judging off the reactions on that tweet that I put out, I eventually had to mute the thing. I feel like I can speak for a lot of people when I can say the proper thing to do is evaluate them now, but very few people have faith that if they struggle, he's going to come off of those guys and be willing to make an uncomfortable deal to get a starter, right? A Casey Mize or a Joe Ryan, and that's the hard part too, is we don't know who's going to be available. The best name that as of right now we know is going to be available is Robbie Ray. And performance against the Braves notwithstanding, Robbie Ray doesn't inspire much confidence. At this point it's a lot of blue on the StatCast card. At this point in his career, he is not an impact starter. He's among the worst in baseball at walks. His strikeout rate's below average. His ground ball rate is terrible. His barrel rate is bottom quartile. His chase rate, he's below average on getting chase. His strikeout rate is bottom third in the sport. He has a 3.38 ERA. All of the estimators say he should be much worse than that. A 4.61 expected ERA. And as of right now, he is the best starter that we know is going to be available in 2 weeks. There probably will be others. We don't know who they're going to be. The Red Sox had the worst record of the American League a month ago. They finished Friday night in first place in the East, in the American League East. The Tigers have gone on a run. They're no longer guaranteed to trade to sell at the deadline, meaning Sonny Gray of the Red Sox may not go on the market, meaning Casey Mize of the Tigers may not go on the market. Yes, it is the correct thing for Alex Anthopoulos to be evaluating internal options. But there are very few people who believe and trust that if those options come up lacking, he's going to pivot. And that is the major problem. I will still stay on the train of Alex Anthopoulos has been right more often than people give him credit for. If you go and you look at a lot of the guys that folks wanted us to sign in, let's say, in February and March, right? Whether it's a Chris Bassett, Lucas Giolito, like all of those guys, they wouldn't fix this problem. None of them are profiling to be playoff starters either. You have plenty of number 4, number 5 types. What you don't have are known quantities to be a game 2 or game 3 starter. And the problem we have right now is everybody expects the Braves to just try to piece it together. Nobody expects the Braves to go out and get a guy. And I even think it's starting to get baked into a little bit of the sports books, right? Braves today sponsor FanDuel. Atlanta has the third best odds, technically fourth, but LA's off the board. Third best odds to make the postseason, right? But when you look at odds to win the World Series, so not only making the postseason, but going in there and winning, they're not the second best odds in the National League. They're the third best odds. The Milwaukee Brewers have jumped in front of the Braves. And the Brewers don't have much of a rotation out behind Mizorowski because of injuries right now. They just went and got an expensive and injured Lance McCullers out of desperation because they need innings. They need arms. And sportsbooks still have them with higher odds to win the World Series than the Braves. You're starting to see where the lack of faith is there in Atlanta being willing to get uncomfortable to go get a known quantity for the playoff rotation. And here's the frustrating thing. This could all work out. A lot of the people who are angry or dislike or are not fans of Alex Anthopoulos, they don't want to admit this. This could very well work out. You go back and you look at 2021, and they won the World Series with Dylan Lee starting a bullpen game and Tucker Davidson starting a bullpen game. Although that one, they did get a longer outing from the bulk guy behind him. But they threw 2 bullpen games in the World Series and won the World Series. The offense was a big part of that. And clearly, they want to upgrade the offense. It could work out, but it's very easy to see how it could not work out. And what's probably the best idea? I'm not free advice to the Braves front office. They're not going to do it, but free advice. Best idea, call 680 The Fan. Call Chris Domino and say, hey, AA is going to come on the show on Monday or Tuesday or whatever, whenever you want to promote it. AA is going to come on the show. And Alex needs to make a point to say, and I understand that he doesn't want to do this because it's going to kind of give up the ghost a little bit, and it's going to put them in probably a little bit of a worse negotiating position. But I think he needs to be very explicit that the Braves are going to add to the rotation in some form. And then he has to do it. Because we've heard this before. We've heard front burner is impact starter, right? You go back another year. We heard they are picking up the extension, the Travis d'Arnaud club option. We've heard the Braves say one thing and then not hold that into the bargain. And there's extenuating circumstances in these things. There always is, right? The Travis d'Arnaud thing, he gave us a caveat up front when that press conference started that this is their thinking now without having sat down and discussed all of it. They had an out built in and nobody relayed that part. So everybody heard Travis d'Arnaud is getting picked up. When in reality, it was our plan as of now, before we've talked about it, is that we're going to bring him back. The impact starter thing. They wanted an impact starter. They had really good health reports on everybody else. So they set their standards really high on the addition. They never made the addition because Alex Anthopoulos has not been willing to make uncomfortable deals. Years, dollar-wise, prospects via trade, whatever. They've not been willing to make uncomfortable deals. So they don't get the impact starter to supplement the guys that they have that they feel comfortable for the postseason. A Schwellenbach, the way he finished last year, a Waldrop. And then all of those guys got hurt in spring training. Strider, they were hopeful he'd be back. He got hurt in spring training too. And you were left with a bunch of back-end guys, right? A Martin Perez, a Bryce Elder, a Grant Holmes, a Reynaldo Lopez, who could stretch and be threes if everything broke right. And then everything broke, but not right. Martin Perez gets hit by a comebacker. Bryce Elder forgets how to be the good pitcher that he was for the first 7 starts of the year, right? Grant Holmes briefly is in the pen. Reynaldo Lopez is in the pen for a while, right? Everything breaks. Somebody's going to get mad at me for this show, right? Somebody's going to get mad at me because I said I understand the idea and the right thing to do is to evaluate your internal options now. That is the right thing to do. But unless it is a very clear and obvious, multiple clear and obvious breakouts that these are the guys that you can ride into battle with in October, you can't stick with these guys. You've got to add somebody. And I think if nothing else, it's an emotional component. If you don't make any sort of meaningful addition at the trade deadline, what message are you sending to that clubhouse? What message are you sending to those 26 guys when you say, hey, y'all were you looked like the best team in baseball for the first month and a half of the season. And then the injury started. And you guys are still really good, and we believe in you, and we think you can win a World Series. But we're not going to sacrifice 3 prospects to bring in anybody to help you do that. What message does that send to the clubhouse? We want them to make a blockbuster trade. You don't have to make a blockbuster trade, but you have to do something. And Alex Anthopoulos has backed himself into a corner by not doing something last deadline, by not doing something this winter. He is now in a position where you have to do something this deadline. Because if you don't, you are showing that clubhouse, this roster, and this iteration of the Braves that they are not worth a small sacrifice and a small investment. Maybe this report, tinfoil hat for a second, maybe this report is somebody in the organization that is worried that Alex Anthopoulos is going to stand pat, and they are trying to ramp up the public pressure on them by leaking this to Ken Rosenthal so that people like me get mad and talk about it. And if that is the case, that is some house of cards stuff. Holy cow, I am in awe of how you played this. And if it's not, and if that is the course of action the Braves have planned, in retrospect, it's going to look like a colossal mistake. That'll do it for this bonus episode of Braves Today. Please like the video. Please subscribe both here and at bravestoday.com. We're going to do our best to look at all of these starters, rehabbing guys and major leaguers in the next 2 weeks and figure out, can any of these guys meaningfully step up into a playoff game? How can you configure this? What can you do to win 4 games in the NLCS, to win 3 games in the NLDS, to win 2 games in the wild card, if that's where you end up being, and to win 4 games in the World Series? Stick around with us. We're going to put in the work, okay? Until next time, this has been Braves Today.